Hi, my name is Emma Vanderhayden, and I'm a political science and history major at Butler University. So, when I decided to take this course, I realized that I really had no previous knowledge of Latin America at all. When we had to write our Why Latin America paragraph, I really just wrote down like I really don't know anything, but I was really eager to learn. And even just in the 2 weeks that I've taken this class, I feel like I've learned so much. The main thing that I wanted to learn in this course is why Latin America is in the place that it is today. For example, whenever like I'm reading the news or whenever I hear someone talking about Latin America, I feel like they're always talking about an issue going on there, something happening with the economy, something happening with like a military coup and stuff like that, and I just don't understand it and I don't know why that's taking place. So this course has already opened my eyes to reasons why that's happening, and I would definitely like to learn more about the issues taking place. But really, anything I read in this class is information gained for me. Um, every day I open my book and I'm learning like 10 new things from each page. So really from the beginning of the class till now I've learned so much. I'm starting with Latin America as a region, sort of their values. I realized shortly that Latin America is a very brave country that's very resilient, and they have a very great sense of human sensibility, and they're just always ready to persevere and to fight for their independence. That's also something I learned. They're really a region that prides itself on sovereignty and wanting that. And unfortunately, the Spanish conquest sort of messed everything up for that. I learned that Spanish conquest really is when like the challenges started to arise in Latin America. So because of the Spanish conquest, I learned that the Spanish conquest implemented social order, which is still in place in Latin America today, with the elites being at the very top and everyone else being at the very bottom. I also learned about elevated political violence happening because of Spanish conquest, which is also still a problem in Latin America. And then I also learned about how Latin America became a very dependent region because they were conquered. They weren't really able to be independent and to really fend for themselves. So after learning about like the basis of Latin America and really what the country was about, I started to learn more about exactly what happened with the Spanish conquest. So starting with the three most important civilizations in Latin America, I learned about the Mayans, I learned about the Incas, and I learned about the Aztecs. So something I did not know about these three civilizations is how politically advanced they were. I knew that they were really smart, and I knew that they were good. Like the Mayans made the calendar, and the Incas were really good at building. But I didn't know how great they were at like political things. Like for example, the Mayans had advanced city-states, and the Aztecs and Incas made empires, and like the Incas even integrated the people that they took with their empire into their society. So I just thought that was really interesting. I didn't know that before. So the Aztecs and Mayans ended up being conquered by Spain, and the Aztec and Mayans were conquered by Spain because Spain had superior technology, more money, more men, and especially more confidence. So something I didn't know is that the Spaniards had a lot more confidence going into this because they had just defeated the Moors in Spain, so they were ready to attack. And the civilizations in Mexico, especially, weren't really scared of the Spaniards, and that's really why they were defeated with the lack of confidence. So also I learned the difference between the Portuguese coming to Brazil and the Spaniards coming to Latin America. So when the Portuguese came to Brazil, no one really wanted to come. There weren't as many opportunities, I guess, in Brazil, but for Spaniards coming to Latin America, they were told like there was gold and there was money and there was things that like there was opportunities for them. But Brazil was a different case. I also learned that about all of the different independence movements that happened because of a result of the control that the Spaniards had over Latin America. So I learned about all of the different independence movements. There's so many, like too many to even count. And it got a little confusing for me at times because there's just one after the other after the other. But that really shows the resilience of Latin America again that I learned about. And I learned about a lot of great leaders like Simon Bolivar, I believe, and just people like that, just really just fighting for Latin American independence. So that was really interesting. So after a lot of the countries gained independence, I learned that the economy was something that was off to a really rough start. And again, that's also a theme you can see in Latin America today, the economy not doing very well. But as a whole theme from like the first half of this course, I'd say, Latin America was becoming more independent, but again, they were still struggling because they were conquested. So then getting into more of Latin America in the world with more Western countries, I started to learn about Latin America working with Britain. So I learned a lot about imperialism, which is the reason for a lot of what's going on in Latin America today. So the the British decided to use imperialism to gain economic benefits and increase their presence in countries around the world. So Britain had the most influence. They had a big navy. They had a great capital, and they also had the ideology of liberalism to spread to the region of Latin America. And the U.S. also started to sort of put themselves in that region with things like the Monroe Doctrine and the Manifest Destiny, really just trying to set their foot into the region as well. So I learned that after Britain had sort of had its reign, and after World War I and World War II, U.S. was really coming on top. The British imperialism was sort of going away. They were losing power because of the World War I and World War II, and so U.S. was gaining power. But unfortunately, the Cold War sort of changed everything, and the Cold War made Latin America a battleground. So something I didn't know is that the Soviet Union and America were basically like fighting over Latin America. The U.S. was trying to contain communism, whereas Soviet Union was really just trying to implement it into those different regions. And I didn't know that the Soviet Union even helped Cuba and helped different countries really implement communism. I didn't know that they were actually really. I thought that just they wanted to be communist, but really the Soviet Union was really pushing it onto the region. So unfortunately, after the Cold War too, Latin America started to become sort of like a backthought to America, and this is sort of where I realized maybe why I don't know much about Latin America now is because Latin America has been losing influence as the years went on. As America started to become a first world power and everything like that, I feel like they just sort of had bigger, better things to do, stuff like that. And so they're like, oh, we're not going to worry about Latin America. And maybe that's why I'm not very informed on it, and that's why it's not taught in schools. I'm not really sure. But pop culture was a big influence after the Cold War. U.S. pop culture was a big influence in Latin America, and it still is. So after that, with Bill Clinton and George Bush, they also weren't really involved with Latin America, and that's sort of when aggression started, because of 9/11 and stuff like that. And then I also started to learn about the sort of start of immigration and foreign hatred. It was interesting to read that this happened in the 1990s, and it's still going on today. The hatred some people just have for foreign people, and especially people in the South. So they in the 1990s even they started saying oh, these immigrants are stealing our jobs and everything. And so I was interested to see where that really started and how it's still implemented today. And the last thing I learned, and sort of the most interesting thing I think that I've learned, is about the environment of Latin America. So I learned that Latin America's environment is not doing well. They are facing habitat loss, deforestation, extinction, land change, erosion, melted glaciers, toxicity, and pollution, all because of imperialism and all because of exploitation by core countries. So this was something that really interested me, and also reminded me of the Marxism theory, but it's really interested me because it just shows core countries are really just taking advantage of Latin America and just trying to exert their force on them to get their raw materials, to get their labor, and then really give them nothing in return. And they were using their all of their environment and everything, and now it's really destroyed, and Latin America has nothing, anymore because their environment's not great because it was destroyed. So learning about that really opened my eyes to how devastating the consequences of imperialism and colonization are on regions like Latin America. So this also showed me how Latin Americans are still able to persevere. They're still just trying their best to make the best out of this situation. I mean, the environment is still going really bad and everything, but I can see and I'm learning that Latin Americans are just trying to make the best out of it and trying to improve their region. I also learned about Latin America and the United States wanting to get into the business of privatizing commodities, which was insane to me, that a core country would want to privatize stuff like water for a region so that water wouldn't be free anymore. And I just think that's insane. And that's also just another example of how core countries really just exploit peripheral countries. But that's pretty much most of what I've learned. I've definitely learned a lot more, but that's what I had summed up into this video. So yeah, I've definitely learned so much within the first 2 weeks, and I hope to learn a lot more. Thanks.